Hi everyone and welcome to the Wrongfully Heard Podcast. This is the Wrongfully Heard Podcast.
And wrongfully convicted.
In this case, nobody got justice.
Was wrongly convicted of a miscarriage of justice. We found new scientific evidence proving her innocence.
So today we're in a little bit of a different setting. We are in my car. Don't mind if there's little noises around. It is just what we have to work with today. So today we are going to be talking about the Henry Keogh case of wrongful conviction. This is a case that happened in Australia, South Australia, Adelaide area, and this case is full of forensic flaws, which we are going to be talking about. But before we get ahead with everything, I just want to say thank you to everyone who showed love over on my TikTok. And let me know what kind of cases you want to see next down in the comments below. But I'm going to add the timestamps of what we are going to be talking about today over here. And without further ado, let's get into it. Adelaide, South Australia, March 18th, 1994. At the Norwood Hotel, Henry Keogh and his fiancée Anna Jane were celebrating at the bar with some drinks. They were exactly 5 weeks away from their wedding. Earlier that day, Anna Jane spent some time with her sister-in-law walking her dog. She was happy, she was super excited about the future and talking about her wedding and just really happy and vivacious mood. There was no hint that in the next 2 hours, her life and a bunch of other people's lives would have been changed forever. Anna Jane said that she had a sore back, and so she said she was going to go home and run a bath. Henry was out, and when he returned at 9:30, a frantic 000 call was made. On the frantic 000 call, Henry stated that he found Anna Jane unconscious in the bathtub. When first responders arrived, they saw the frantic scene, the tragic scene, and although so tragic, they believed that the whole incident was accidental. One of the officers that arrived initially stated that there was nothing suspicious about the scene at the time. The working theory was simple. They believed that Anna Jane had a couple too many drinks and she was tired, run down from wedding planning, and she hopped into the bath and fell asleep and drowned. But as we know, initial impressions are not always the final interpretation, and with police investigation with such a tragic accident had to dive in deeper. But within diving deeper, they believed that there was some suspicion behind the scene. In the eyes of the law, when they pivot from a natural/accidental cause of death to a murder, all hands are on deck and they are trying to find the murderer. Every piece of evidence that was collected from this point out was used to capture a cold-blooded killer and was just framed around tunnel vision. It was framed around tunnel vision and catching the murderer instead of focusing on what was laid in front of them and using that to find justice in this case. To the outside world, Henry Keogh and his fiancée were a power couple. Anna Jane was a lawyer and Henry Keogh was he worked in finance, but the investigators found quickly something that sparked to seem as financial friction between the pair. The police found 5 life insurance policies in Anna Jane's name, which was taken out by Henry Keogh, totaling around $1.15 million as Keogh as the beneficiary. Keogh admitted to signing off on these financial life policies on her behalf. It's technically illegal, but Keogh argued it was a common, if sloppy, professional maneuver to prevent policies from lapsing to keep commissions flowing. He maintained that the amount of these life funds, that it totaled around $400,000, but Anna Jane was aware of 2 of these life policies. The significance of this evidence found cannot be understated, because in a case where there's not much physical evidence, it is really based around circumstantial evidence, and it was not looking good for the motive of Henry Keogh. By reframing this questionable business practice into a cold-blooded theory for murder, it gave the jury a reason why Henry could have done this. They effectively told the jury that a man who would forge a signature for a life insurance policy would also be capable of murder. This is a bit of a stretch. They are 2 completely different crimes. But while a motive provides a reason, the prosecution needed a how in this case. They found their architect in Dr. Colin Manick. At the time, Dr. Colin Manick was the chief forensic expert in South Australia. To a jury, this is the most credible person to be conducting the forensic evidence around this case, and as he is the highest in South Australia. He was a man with 10,000 autopsies on his resume. Manick presented the main theory of this case, called the gripped theory. He pointed to 4 marks on Anna Jane's leg, claiming that they were fresh bruises formed from hand gripping, stating that Henry lifted her legs above her head, drowning her in the bathtub. What the jury didn't know is that Manick's qualifications were not as they seemed. Despite his massive resume, he had no formal qualifications in histopathology, which is the study of tissues. Just days before the Keogh trial, Dr. Manick was having a bit of trouble in another case where it was a death of 3 babies, and he claimed that they were abused due to the term called bronchopneumonia, despite the child having 15 broken ribs and a skull fracture. The coroner noted that Manick's investigations into this baby trial were unqualified and the opposite of its purpose, and they closed off the investigations rather than opening them. In the Keogh case, these forensic errors continued. So Manick used black and white photography to examine the bruises, but this is useless in examining aging bruises. He failed to record organ weights. He failed to recognize and use in the trial the fact that Anna Jane had 37 doctor's visits in the last 5 years, and he claimed that she was such a healthy young woman and that this kind of accident wouldn't have happened to her. He even relied on a pseudoscience called aortic staining as a positive indication of murder. This is a theory that was later found as entirely skeptical and not admissible in court. But to a jury, the highest point of forensic qualification was Dr. Manick, and so they believed what he was saying and it seemed credible to them. These are people from different walks of life. These are not people who are forensically knowledgeable or criminology-based knowledge. So they ended up finding Henry Keogh guilty of the murder of Anna Jane in 1995, and he was sentenced to life in prison. For the next 20 years, Henry Keogh lived in a tiny cell. Outside, the world moved on while his life was stuck in a prison cell. His daughter, Elise, who was only 12 years old when he was convicted, later grew up, got married, had children. Henry Keogh had a survival mechanism while he was in prison because he maintained his innocence the whole way through. He called it head, health, and heart. He controlled the voices in his mind. He got to the gym, stayed physically fit, and he let go of all of the anger built up inside of him. During his long sentence, he applied 3 positions to the prerogative of mercy, and they were all rejected. But the most catastrophic failure was the suppression of truth. In 2004, a government expert, Professor Barry Vernon Roberts, reviewed Henry Keogh's case and found that there was no evidence to murder. He concluded that Anna Jane probably endured a heart problem when she was in the bathtub and lost consciousness and subsequently drowned. However, the state sat on this report for 10 years. This wasn't just a mistake at this point. This was a blatant look at evidence that was credible to release Henry Keogh, and he still was stuck in prison while they ignored the facts. The breakthrough finally occurred in 2014. Legal architect Dr. Robert Moles helped steer to a new law in South Australia, which is the law for a second or subsequent appeal. For the first time, Henry Keogh had some hope as he had new and fresh evidence for this appeal. The science that convicted him was systematically dismantled. Testing for a chemical called hemosiderin proved that the bruises on Anna Jane's leg were days to weeks old. They were the day-to-day bruises that every human gets that were completely unrelated to her death. Professor Gail Spring labeled all of the forensic evidence as rubbish, explaining that they were not up to standard. Even more damning, the grip theory was proven to be a physical impossibility. The physics required Keogh to be standing past a physically blocked wall to be able to drown Anna Jane in the bathtub at that time. Manick was placed before the medical board and his testing was finally discredited. He redacted key parts of his testimony in the Keogh trial. He admitted that he actually did not look at the bruise under a microscope, and he changed his story on what the grip theory was. So now the state's theory, the prosecution, was completely vanished. It was unreliable. It was non-existent. Exoneration. So now Henry Keogh has walked out of prison 20 and a half years after his conviction. His conviction was quashed, and the state eventually just abandoned the thought of a retrial based on Manick's theories that he redacted, and that Manick was unfit to testify at the trial. Keogh received around $2 million of ex gratia payments, but he said that you can't unring the bell. $2 million cannot repay a third of your life, watching your children grow up, seeing your grandkids born, spending time with them, the public distrust in you, the fact that it would be hard to gain employment, it would be hard to build your life after that point. Because the original autopsy and all of the forensic evidence was severely flawed, we still don't know to this day what happened to Anna Jane, and we can't be 100% certain ever. The system failed her as much as they failed Keogh. It was a chosen narrative for murder instead of going through it fairly, justly, as the criminal justice system should do. As we reflect on this 20-year injustice of Henry Keogh, we need to look at the main points that led to his wrongful conviction. So, as I said before, the dangers of expert knowledge, a resume that lied, that said 10,000 autopsies had been done when they hadn't, and the recruitment of Adelaide's justice system at the time is just so flawed. How do you put someone that high up on a pedestal that goes to court cases, that talk about their expert knowledge, that claim to have all this expertise, and to a jury of people who are just everyday people who don't fully understand the ins and outs? How do you put someone in a position where they're not qualified? This is a tragedy that now they have to go through every single case that he was a part of because he did not have the expert knowledge. But I can assure you that they would not have gone through every case where he was a part of, because it would only be brought up when red flags are brought up, when retrials are brought up, appeals, the necessity of a second right to appeal. Without this law going through the jurisdiction, we may have never seen Henry Keogh walk free. And that's why it's so important to have this second appeal, or to have as many appeals if you are maintaining your innocence, because now he is able to be out free with his family. Although years are lost, it could have potentially been the rest of his life. So this is a learning lesson. If you are ever on jury duty, don't take every expert witness as fact, because believe me, in all the cases that I have looked through, a lot of these forensic experts make mistakes. We are human beings, we make mistakes, but they also lie on resumes. In a career like this, it is so crucial. That is the end of this episode. I want to say thank you to everyone for watching today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. A bit of a different scene, but we work with what we've got. The content is what really matters at the end of the day. So thank you everyone for watching the Wrongfully Heard podcast, where we give voices to those who once weren't heard. Thank you everyone, and I'll see you next time.